Did you know that? When I was a kid, they said your brain stopped at a certain age and it never changed, and now we know it's not true. The way we use our brains actually changes the connections in our brain, and especially in that HPA part of the brain that's like the main circuit board. We can establish new connections. So for people that have a long-term problem with depression or worry or anxiety, it kind of becomes almost hardwired. It's not quite, but it's modifiable through experience. So if we can learn to notice the triggers, notice our initial impulse towards our habitual reaction, but say, wait a minute, take a step back, take a breath, we have the ability to calm ourselves if we have the skills. It's not that hard. That part's easy. We can teach a person to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that, have you ever been on a vacation somewhere that was, everything was perfect, perfect weather, you felt that you left your troubles behind, and it feels so different in the body, right? But that's always with us. We just have to know how to press the right buttons. And they're all up here. So we learn how to do that in that 8-week course. And then we encourage people to develop practice so that it's not only during the course. The whole idea is you take this learning and you apply it to your every experience every day as much as possible. I forget who the author is at this moment. Wrote the book called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. I'm not sure if it was Jack Kornfield, maybe. After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. So, you have to wash the dishes, right? Washing dishes, that's part of life. We got to do it. So what's your attitude towards washing dishes? I gotta go wash the dishes. I'm sick of washing dishes. I've washed dishes my whole life. How is that gonna... Okay, maybe you bought a dishwasher. But what, then you gotta, I know, they got robots that sweep the floor. Everything's taken care of. But no, there's always something that's part of maintaining our lives, maintaining our households, maintaining our relationships. It can seem like work. So what about taking the attitude of this could be a delightful experience. Hey, the warm water on my hands actually feels pretty good. It's interesting how, I rub the thing with the sponge a few times and now it starts to feel smooth and it's clean and shiny and now it's beautiful. You can have a different attitude towards ordinary experiences and your whole experience of your life can change that way. And I've not talked about relationships, which is probably the most important thing for human beings. If we can step out of our own self-centeredness and relate to other people in a more open way, fuller way, a more honest way, if we can empathize with their experience, it forms much stronger connections, deeper connections. So many infinite applications of mindfulness. In the program, we teach you the basic skills and we encourage you to incorporate it into your life forevermore. Does that answer your question? Okay. Others? Yes?
Bob and I have been through your course in 06 when we had both finished treatments with cancer, found it very helpful.
Okay, good. So your subjective experience of the program, it was very helpful. Good, because that means our research didn't miss that. Our research corresponds to what people tell us. Generally, this is the case. Now, it's not always easy. Sometimes what happens in the beginning, it actually gets harder. Because what happens when I talked about unhelpful coping techniques like avoidance, right? Do anything else but face what I have to face. Unhelpful coping techniques. So, however, when we stop doing all those things, blunting our sensibilities by drugs or alcohol or addictions of various kinds, when we stop doing that, suddenly we can become much more aware of some of the unsatisfactory aspects of our current way of conducting ourselves, and that can be very difficult. And so that's partly why what's called a loving kindness practice is taught early on. In loving kindness practice, we get in touch with our capacity for feeling benevolent feelings like love. And we practice feeling those things and directing them towards ourselves and others. So in Calgary and other places where there's a lot of Scotsmen and other Northern Europeans, it seems like you're not allowed to like yourself. We're so self-critical. It's really hard to say it's okay to treat yourself well and to be kind to yourself. You know, we're very judgmental, not only of others, but of ourselves, and so harsh on ourselves, punitive. And that can be very limiting for us if we only see our faults and not our possibilities. And so we want to accept that, yes, we're flawed, but we have good qualities, and we should direct care and love and towards ourselves as well as towards others. And they really go together. You can't do one without the other. You can't be very much benefit to someone else if you are depleted, if you are not well yourself. So being kind to yourself as well as being kind and caring towards others is part of this practice. To overcome especially that first discovery that, gee, I am a schlemiel. Yes?
When a negative thought or bad stress starts to come into your mind, I think what you're telling us tonight is you hear a lot of people say, well, don't think that, block it out. But I don't know if the mind works that way. So I think your skill is, or your program is to, when you feel that coming in, kind of stop and start to actually feel your toes and work up to your kneecaps.
Okay, so I'll repeat the question as I'm understanding it. So when bad thoughts come into your mind, what do? The common recommendation to blank out your mind or don't think those thoughts, that's usually doesn't work. And some of you said you were golfers, so you know when you say, don't look at that lake over there, where's your golf ball going to go? Yes, so part of the skill is first noticing that we're going down that track in our own minds. We can notice the negative or worrisome or depressive thoughts or anxious thoughts. We notice them, and then what can we do? Well, partly just recognizing that they are just thoughts is helpful. It gains a little distance, so that's reducing the amount of identification with the thoughts. We can learn to say, you know, we can watch it like almost like a movie show or like a dream. Those are just thoughts. We don't have to buy into them so much. But then we can, as your question suggested, we can choose what to think instead. So we can't say don't think or just blank the mind out. It's not that easy, but we can say, instead of thinking here about, let's take a negative thought. That guy is cutting me off in traffic. He's a SOB and totally uncaring individual. Something along those lines. You could think that, but what else could you think that would end up with you feeling something different, perhaps more beneficial? What could you say? I heard something.
Run into him.
You could, you could run into him, or.
I went through that a month ago.
Well, I know as an expert I'm not supposed to offer advice, but I'd say don't run into him. Don't pull out your gun or whatever. No, you could say something along the lines of, oh, there goes a person kind of like me. They're kind of in a hurry. They're kind of maybe got other things on their mind than good driving. Have you ever made a mistake driving yourself? Never, right? So, you know, if you take an approach such as that, direct your mind to see the situation in a broader context, you might not have as angry and of a response. So that's kind of the idea. And we might even say, man, that guy must be under a lot of stress. He's driving through the world not knowing what he's doing. Pretty sorry state to be in. So if we think that, we might be a little bit more kind and understanding of what they're going through. We've been there too. I admit it, I've probably cut somebody off in traffic. I know I have.
That's why golf is good for you. It relaxes your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and as we practice these methods, I mentioned that mental activity can be like habit forming. We kind of reinforce those tracks in our mind or in our brain. They're not the same, but they're related. And those ones we use a lot start to be reinforced. And so you can find yourself being angry all the time. But if we can change that, we can shift it, we can start to use more considered responding to situations. We can start to develop alternative behaviors, alternative ways of thinking and feeling in relation to these experiences. And then we're less bothered often by these troublesome thoughts. So Dr. Zindel Siegel in Toronto found for people that were depressed and had a habit of ruminative worrying as part of their presentation, we're able to reduce that through these mindfulness practices. Less worrying. So it is possible. It looks like Stuart's telling us our time is about up. I am available through Alberta Health Services. Please contact me if you'd like to learn more. If you want to visit with me, I'm happy to do that. So thank you very much.
Stay around here. It seems to me that there's maybe a parting message. I don't know how many of you have difficulty having a continuous sleep over the evening. I'm up at least 2 or 3 times a night. How about the balance of you? Any of you ever have to get up at night? There you go. What's your parting thought on that you leave with us to help us?
Well, you know, mindfulness practice has been shown to help with quality of sleep. It is not the most effective treatment for pervasive sleep difficulties. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is the most effective treatment for insomnia, but mindfulness added to that is often, it looks like in at least a couple of recent studies, to add to the effect of cognitive behavioral treatment. But the thing about sleep is, you know, again, what's the mental activity? Oh, I have to get up again. And if it's related to frequent urination, oh, reminds you of your cancer maybe, right? And then what's going on in the mind? And then you get back in bed and what's going on? The mind is racing, and that's not conducive to sleep. So we can learn how to bypass that habitual struggle. Sleep is not something you can make happen either. It's something you have to allow to happen. And we can create conditions that make it more possible, including reducing the arousal, physiological arousal, calming, quieting the mind, focusing on more pleasant mental experiences. So I play golf when I can't get back to sleep, and usually 2 or 3 holes, I'm back to sleep.
One personal thought is, I was diagnosed 7.5 years ago, and I made an observation to Dr. Hussein, I was under his care at the time, although he's never shot anything at me like called radiation. And I said, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, and it's still true today, is that I no longer turn the radio on in the car. I can drive literally from Cochrane to Edmonton to Vancouver and enjoy the scenery, and I'm not missing the radio at all. So I must have stumbled onto something without knowing it in terms of mindfulness.
Yes, so I know I rushed over one of the slides, but creating a special opportunity to practice, such as being in your car. I know that one of the physicians at Tom Baker, Daniel Hang, he has a mindfulness practice, and he shared with his colleagues one day that when he gets to the cancer center, he parks the car, sits in the car for 5 or 10 minutes, and just centers himself and finds himself and calms himself and prepares himself to be fully present with his patients. And I bet you they feel the difference.
Very interesting. Listen, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation here. I think you've touched a lot of us. This is the quietest I've ever heard this group for an awful long time.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'd like to give you this tie, which is a symbol of the Prostate Cancer Canada campaign, if you will, to increase awareness.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
And
Thank you all.